We manage a number of international schools, 21 currently, and we've set up about 110. And then we do a whole bunch of other professional services. So we do things like school supply for schools, professional development, training and learning, operations management, those sort of things. So you may have come across this before, but that's essentially who we are. Now, I realize crowdsourcing innovation with idea management sounds like a bit of a fun suck. It sounds like it's taking the excitement out of what should be interesting, what should be enjoyable. But it's something that we've started doing in the last sort of nearly 12 months now, and is really bearing fruit for us. And so I just wanted to share the journey, share some of the learnings we've had with this process, and give some suggestions to you if you'd like to pursue it and look further into it for your own context or your own school. Quickly to set the scene and just get us all thinking the same way, I'm going to pose 3 questions. So just feel free to unmute for these and just yell out an answer to what you think could be the right response. There's no right answer for these, by the way. Creativity versus innovation. Is there a difference between these two things? We often use those words a lot when we describe the role of EdTech related roles or learning innovation coaches or tech directors. Does anyone want to have a stab at what creativity is or innovation is, or perhaps to compare and contrast them? Give some thinking time, because sometimes it's a bit hard to be just thrown in the deep end. Oh, cool, awesome. So Alejandro, I think they said very similar, but not the same. Innovation is new, it's useful. We've also got the innovation can be applied from Vera. I really like that one actually, Vera. I think that's key is application. Creativity is idea-based and innovation is the action. Yeah, I tend to agree with all of those comments there. Creativity is the big idea you have in the shower, or you're out jogging, or that wakes you up in the middle of the night, something you have to write down, you put on a post-it, you put into notes on your iPhone. Innovation is the practical implementation of that idea. It's the tangible action attached to it. And what you can often find is that big idea that you have at the beginning doesn't quite look like the innovative product that you get at the end. And that's okay. Because what you need is that practical application. It's great to have big ideas, but they've got to flow through and actually take action. All right, 2 more. If you are an EdTech coach or a learning innovation coach, or you work with technology in schools, or you're working on creativity and innovation, what areas of the school can you affect? Typically, we would say, well, obviously I can affect the curriculum. And obviously I can affect the pedagogy in my classroom. Is there anything else that we can affect in the school? All of them. Absolutely, I'm going to say straight away, all of them. Everything. Great, this is what I want. Absolutely, we can affect, and creativity and innovation can affect the operations of a school. It can affect how you connect with the parent community. It can affect how you communicate with members of the staff, with the students and others. It can affect wellness programs in the school. It can affect HR. And so I think as we think about creativity and innovation and the idea of innovation management, we don't want to just restrict it to maybe the discrete areas of curriculum and pedagogy, but realize that it can be applied to timetables, how people meet, how people communicate, how people collaborate as well. And the school culture and student engagement, thank you as well. Now, personally, in your own experience, how do you spark innovation in your context? How do you actually get or drive innovation within your own classroom, perhaps with a group of teachers, perhaps in your engagements with students or in other committees you are in the school? What are your sort of go-to strategies or techniques? One thing I'd say a lot of leaders would do is they would try, if they wanted to spark innovation, they'd try to espouse educator agency or promote teacher agency, allowing teachers to not be dictated by curriculum, but instead pursue their own interests and passions where possible to see if something good can come from that. Some other people might say, reflection, absolutely, thank you. You're just down as user, but having a reflective process in place to go, you know, what worked well out of that? What didn't quite work well? What do we want to keep? What do we want to throw away? Some schools would say having spaces will help you spark innovation, whether they're physical spaces that are maybe agile, can shift around to have those collaborative meetings, or whether you're using digital spaces, like things like a Twitter hashtag, like Live Curious is doing right now, or a school hashtag to deprivatize practice, share the great things that are going on. So there's lots of different ways that you can spark innovation in schools. You can be quite strategic about it. And that's why I like idea management, because it's a very strategic approach to doing that. I want to talk about what we used to do, and we still do some of this stuff, versus what we're trying to do now in terms of sparking innovation and a change in our schools. So we got really good at this for a while. So what we would do, first of all, is we got good at finding out who were the key practitioners or teachers or members of staff or people on operations who were doing interesting stuff. We were very cognizant about watching social media, getting into classrooms, understanding the business operations within the school, finding all the people that were doing interesting things. That was key, because I think sometimes when you're trying to spark innovation or change, you think everyone has to do it at the same time. Everyone has to be drawn along, and that can be a big time suck. And it can be hard because some people can refuse or actually sort of throw up a wall and say they don't want to do it. So we sort of actively went for the people who were already doing something interesting that perhaps we could help showcase and scale. So we'd find those people. We would use a coaching model with them to talk about, how they designed that experience or that operation or that lesson, how we could support them with maybe making it a little bit better or adding value to it. And then what was particularly important there was we would capture the process. We were very cognizant or very focused on video reflections, capturing snapshots of practice, documenting in blog posts, Twitter, those sort of things. And then we would take that and we would showcase it. So we'd make a big deal out of it. So whether that was publishing on YouTube, publishing on Twitter, creating things like iBooks that we'd publish to the iBook platform on iOS and iPadOS, macOS too now. But we wanted everyone to see what was going on in that person's classroom or in their part of the school. Because more often than not, teachers will listen to other teachers. They'll follow other teachers in the organization rather than listen to what comes from the top. So it was all about that: identify, support, showcase, and then the scale bit. From there, we could then go, well, grade 2, they've done a really good snapshot of how they allow students to showcase learning in new ways, not just through written assessments. Just check it out and maybe you could pick it up. And then the person will be like, oh, okay, I'll look at that and try it out. So we got really good at that. But it has flaws. And it really starts from the beginning because we were picking the people we wanted to work with. We were very deliberate in who we targeted because they were easy to work with, right? I don't know if any of you, who's seen True Detective? Anyone? TV show? It's actually probably an unusual one to bring up in an education conference because it's really dark and it's got some beautiful dialogue within it. But there's one bit where they're talking about these 2 police officers who have just gone down this sort of dark path of trying to solve this crime. And they go, look, life's barely long enough to get good at one thing. So be careful what you get good at. And I think that was our problem. We got really good at figuring out who were the easiest people to work with in the organization, the low-hanging fruit that would bear resources and ideas really quickly for us that we could help scale. And we weren't being inclusive. We weren't really working with the people who were more humble, the people that might not have engaged for cultural reasons, the people that were disenfranchised from working with the school, the people that we just didn't know. And so we started looking at how do we, instead of focusing on one person, open up our work in regards to innovation to everyone. And that's where the idea of innovation management came from. And ultimately, it was about being more diverse and inclusive, because when we're more diverse and inclusive in our processes, we get better results and we get ideas that we've never even considered. And I'll show you some of these in a minute as I talk through the platform itself. So what is an idea management platform? Really, basically, it's a website. It's a specialized piece of software, a website that people go to, and it's very much like social media. And I'll show you how it works. What happens is we post a question to the community, and these questions are really called challenges. And you'll see there on the left, it says HMW. If you've done any design thinking before, you'll know that means how might we? And so we started off quite small and working with our headquarters is in Princeton in New Jersey, working with the office staff there. And we said, look, you know, how might we be more environmentally sustainable within the workforce? You post that question and then users submit their ideas. Anyone can come in with any idea they have related to that challenge and post their ideas. What happens then is we can put phases in. So you post your idea and then all members of the community can come in and give feedback as well. They might go, oh, this is really cool. Have you seen this resource? Or have you seen where they're doing this currently at another school? Or did you think about this as well? You may need to have this consideration as well. So we can have feedback rounds. We can have voting rounds where people say, yep, that's a great idea, or, you know, maybe not, that's not something we want to look at now. We can do success criteria and do common sort of rubrics that you would do with the students sometimes. So we can have all these little milestones to help the idea get better, more directed, and focus it on action. What's the tangible action that you can get out of that?
Ahora sí.
Sorry, was that a question or? And then what happens ultimately is when they've been through those milestones, we take the best of them. We pick out the best ones and we ensure that everyone knows how we're actioning those items. So in this instance, it was a really sort of small one with the staff office. We built a sustainable kitchen for low cost, and we started investigating offsetting carbon emissions for our flights, which stopped happening about 12 months ago. So that one really didn't go anywhere. But the idea is you can challenge your community to focus on different topics. Now, we've done quite a number of these now. So we've done things like environmental sustainability. The second we went to remote, we thought, well, this is a good option or a good way to get people's feedback on how do we stay connected? Because we've got people in Princeton, Middle East, Asia, Europe, all over the place, trying to keep them all connected while we work remotely. We started looking at some of our business lines, like the school supply business or professional services business. And then we did a really interesting challenge with a group of educators. It was at the end of last school year, so July last year, before everyone went on, June actually, before everyone went on holiday. And we said, what new practices should we keep or implement as a result of our experience with online learning? We've all been doing this remote learning for so long now and online learning, and elements of it are terrible and you just can't stand them. But what worked really well? What are the things that you want to keep doing and you want others to know about? And this was just beautiful. We just found and discovered all these different things we hadn't seen before, and really deep, rich conversations about the types of implementations of these various ideas. And I want to show you one more, and then we'll talk about the practicalities of this. A month ago, we ran one. Are you familiar with NISA? It's a school group based in, I think it stands for Near East, Near East South Asia. So it's Middle East and Asia schools. Similar to maybe CIS or ESIS or FOBASIA if it's the British schools. And we said, you know, what opportunities lie ahead for the next year? And what we did, instead of just getting their idea and the framework for the idea, we ran it in a 2-day design sprint and got them to develop prototypes. We wanted full action. So we wanted something tangible that everyone at the event could take away and use. And we got a whole prototype for how to establish a creative scheduling process in your school. So you could have flexible days, so you could have Genius Hour, so you could have passion-based projects and learning going on. And not just the framework for it, but how you'd implement it in terms of the change management strategy. We got an awesome one for setting up more opportunities for asynchronous PBL, so students didn't have to sit face-to-face to the camera the entire lesson. We got a great online learning handbook out of it. So this was just a one-stop shop for parents, teachers, and students that had everything they needed to engage in learning with the school. So there was no going here, there to Google Sites, EduBlogs, Final Sites over here, the school portals here, blah, blah, blah. This is where you go for everything all the time. There was a comprehensive wellness plan built for pre-K-12 that covered staff, students, and the wider community. Online student transition was really useful. Like, how do we bring students into our school and say goodbye to students when we can't see them face to face, and make sure that that process is well documented and we're really looking after the students in our charge. And this is something we're working on even further now with the Diversity Collaborative, but people started developing DEIJ or JEDI development plans for how are we going to tackle these serious issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice with our schools. So the good thing about this process is it drives action. That's the key for us, is that at the end of the day, people walk away with something useful, or the organization walks away with something useful that we can implement, rather than going in this cycle of discussion and big ideas and talking and things are great, but always cycling out and taking action. All right, sorry, yeah, so what are your options? So I've shown you this platform, I've talked a bit about how we've done it. What are your options? So idea management is now embraced by every Fortune 500 company. It's certainly something that's grown within business and is sort of starting to leak out into other sectors as well. There are lots of these things around. So if you're thinking about social media as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, blah, 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 just take a screenshot of that. It'll be on the recording anyway. There are lots of these around. Very quickly there, some of them are prohibitively expensive. Like, it's just not even an option unless you're from some school with a huge budget. Like Bright Idea, right? That's not for educators. I think the minimum cost to start up is $100,000 a year. So it's just like, no, thank you. But the one on the top left, Open Ideal, is open source and free. It's something that you can implement yourself. If you've got an IT manager in your school and an IT team that's got some technical capacity, you could host your own version of this at your school and have it accessible by the community. I'll talk about our one that we chose a little bit in this too and show you a demo of it. But the bottom left one there, Crowdicity, was the one that suited our needs the best as an organization that works with students and educators and other businesses. What were the criteria we sort of looked at? Like when I say DMM, like we sort of do decision-making matrices so we can compare and contrast our choices. So price, first of all, you know, we're a non-profit. We don't have bajillions of dollars. We want to make sure it's something that's cost-effective for us and our organization. Support costs are something important to consider. Is there any ongoing cost when getting help or engaging with other people as well? Is there free basic access? And this is the good news for you guys, is nearly all of those platforms will give you a free account that you can test with like 10 users or 20 users or 30 users, which is super cool. So you can go in, set up a challenge, show your boss, show some people at school, get them in together and try it out. But they'll just limit you on either the time or the number of users that can fit within that access. Client agnostic, all I mean by that is, can it work on everything? Is it going to work on the kid's Chromebook and the teacher's MacBook and mum and dad's Windows PC at home? Do they have an app for iPhone or for Chrome? So just checking off that, you know, it's going to be fine. We don't have to worry that suddenly 30% of our organization can't get access to it. What's the maturity of it? So when I talk about maturity, we just wanted to make sure it wasn't something that sprung up, you know, last year. That this is like a product that maybe has been around for 5+ years, just to know that it's not going to disappear 6 months from now or a year from now after we paid the money or invested a lot of time and energy into setting it up. Is it easy to use? Is it super easy? And I would say most of them are really easy to use. They're very much designed like social media. Like anyone who's used Facebook before or something similar will know how to use them. Gamified, so is it fun? It's got like voting and liking and scoring points and all those. You get badges and they all pretty much do that as well. Is it analytics? And that just means there's data at the end of it. So you can go, well, this challenge worked well perhaps because of this, this, and this. We noticed there was no engagement or a lower set of engagement at milestone 3. Let's change how we do that to make it more like a successful challenge that we did previously. Existing clients, I just checked them all, like when I was looking at them, that the ones that we were going to work with or consider had worked with schools or universities before. None have really worked with schools before, but they have worked with universities. So that was sort of our go-to to make sure they understood, you know, the nature of our business and the type of things we might need. And this is the biggest one. Do they let people under 18 on their platform? Many do not. Many will say they're not willing to take that risk. And so that's always a question as you're going through to go, because you don't want to, it's a bit disingenuous, I think, if we do not head down the path of engaging students on this. Right now, we haven't. We've been in the process of testing it small within our business, testing it with a small group of schools, testing it with a big group of schools, testing at a conference level. And we've been very happy. But ultimately, we want student ideas on this. We want to ask them the big questions about the things that need to change in school, or with the curriculum, or with pedagogy, or with our learning spaces. Get their feedback, because that will really help us. And then I always, just because I'm cheap in this regard, but always hit them up for discounts. If you're a non-profit, every tech company in the world will give you some sort of discount or freebie. So I always push for those as well. Quick demo. I'll just show you it now. I'm just going to stop sharing this screen and share this one. So this is the platform itself. This is what it looks like when I log in, which is a bit different, but what users see. So you get this sort of big, I'm going to make it a bit bigger for you just so it's a bit easier. It's like if you've ever built your own WordPress site, or a Google site, or Strikingly, or honestly, it's super easy. A lot of drag and drop for images. You can embed videos to explain things. And then when you get down to here, you see all the challenges we're currently running. So you can see we've been running this one currently, which is about diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, with a group of about 80 individuals in that one. We did the NISA one recently. We're kicking off one with all the leaders across all of the ISS schools, starting from Monday. We had a few around engaging students online, and we've got a big one, which we're really excited about. If you've heard of the Diversity Collaborative, we're running a challenge with them starting in early March, really about taking action in terms of those 4 key areas within schools and education. So you can see the current challenges sort of rotating there. You get the gamified bit down here. So you get like a leaderboard of all the people who are currently winning across the challenges. You can see a lot of the recent comments from different people about things that are going on. And then I can dig a little bit deeper. So I can then look into perhaps challenges that are not featured on the front page, or I can even look into some of the ones we've previously run as well. And I start pulling those up as well in there. And then you've got the option from the back end, which I'll show you in a minute, of hiding stuff, moving stuff away that's not relevant anymore, or stuff that might be confidential, stuff that's only for a certain group. And that's probably key. When you look at the challenges themselves and how you make them, the good thing about them is you can set a challenge to a very set group of people. Like we've got some things internally that we only want for ISS leadership, or some things that we only want for our ISS staff, or some things that we only want for those two, and then all the heads of schools. So we can have different groups. So you could have set student, parent, teacher groups. You can have combined ones. But when I create a challenge, you'll see it's not that too difficult to do. I'll just do one called test 1, 2, 3. And then I can put in titles, subtitles. I can get descriptions in there. You can add images. Nothing crazy about this. The bit that's probably most interesting is these two, milestone and challenge. A milestone challenge is one that you say, okay, submit your idea. And then when you get to 10 votes, then your idea will get pushed along. And then you have to answer 3 more questions. Once you've done that, it'll get pushed along. And then you might have to get a scorecard done by someone that says, this idea's got this, 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 and this, and then it's approved. So a milestone is like a series of steps. A funnel challenge is a timed one. You've got 3 days for the first phase. If you don't complete in the first phase, you're out. After the first phase, if you're done, then you get pushed into phase 2, then phase 3, then phase 4. And so we've done both of those. I've found the phase challenges are really good for like 2 days. If you want to get something done fast, they're great for keeping the tempo. But most of the time we're using those milestone challenges in there. So you just design them in here. It's really, see, I can just say if it's visible, posting ideas, I can say who has access to it, who I don't want in there. You can have user groups. You can say all the students are in one group, all the teachers are in another. It's really not that difficult to figure out. And then you just get a few other things. So you can manage all your users in lots of different ways. So you can see we've got about 292 active users currently. And each time we do a challenge, we're growing that further. I think by the end of March, we'll be running at about 500 in there. And we'll keep it about that space for a few months to make sure we can do that well. And then we want to grow it further. The design is all really easy, color schemes and stuff. You can do pages layout. And then just the only other interesting thing you probably really care about is you can gamify it so that points are allocated for different actions, following users, commenting, giving feedback. Because one thing we've always done with our challenges is obviously there are sometimes rewards associated with winning a challenge, but we always give out an award for most valuable member of the community, like the most valuable contributor, the person who helped out, the person who was always giving feedback, always coming up with ideas, always sharing resources. That's really key to us. We want to incentivize that collaboration. We want to incentivize people to engage with the platform, because you might have an idea at the beginning, but once you see someone else's, that might spark something in you, and it might bring an idea about or something new that you could do as well. What learnings do we have? We've certainly had a lot. So there's, I think we're literally, next month will be 12 months. So we've had it for a year next month. The first one is embrace design thinking as a process. Like any good design, you could talk about a lot of design cycles, and really the only big different one for me in design thinking is it starts with empathy, really understanding the individual, the user, or the problem. And that's why I like it. And the good thing is, because it's been embraced by education and educators so much, there are so many great facilitation strategies for design thinking out there. And if you get a chance to drop into, I'm actually surprised anyone came to my presentation, because Ewan McIntosh is running the whole day workshop today. The guy's a genius. Like, just go and listen to him if you get a chance. But the strategies you can use in design thinking lend themselves really well to innovation management. And we found that the ability to write a compelling how might we question is the key to engagement. So whether we're writing that question and saying, how might we reimagine our leadership pipelines in our school to make them more inclusive, or whether we're posting those or letting the users do that, and they essentially make their own challenges then. So we might say, we're going to look at diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice, but you guys post the how might we questions, and then everyone else answers them. So teaching people how to write really compelling how might we questions was key for us. Take advantage of your organization's strategic direction and plans. That's the best. Everything we do within this platform, nearly everything, not everything, nearly everything is aligned to our strategic goals. So your school will have a 3-year plan, strategic developments they're working on, initiatives. Always make sure that there are specific challenges attached to those, because it just supports the direction of the school. It's good to have other ones that are outliers and trying crazy stuff. That's fantastic. But it's really good to take advantage of your own strategic direction as well. And just make it fun. Like, just make it interesting and engaging and fun. And just by the nature of the platform and the way of working, it is fun. People get into it so quickly. Like, we have not had a dud challenge yet. Like, they've always had 300, even if we're running for 2 days, 300, 400 comments, 1,700 votes, tons of great ideas. It's been a really interesting process to be involved in and also watch from this side as well. And so that's why I'm particularly excited about kicking off this one with all the heads of schools next week, because it'll be interesting to see what their challenges currently are and how they can support each other. And we get the added advantage of building community across our schools. And then as we work with the Diversity Collaborative, it's going to be really cool as well. What questions do you have? And I'll just stop sharing so I can see the chat, and feel free to unmute yourself if you want as well. Nothing? Awesome. That was easy. I'm going to jump back. Thank you very much. That was really easy with a smaller group. There are my contact details there. If you have any questions around platform itself, what innovation or idea management is, or just broadly discussions around creativity and innovation, feel free to contact me. Feel free to reach out. And I use email. Obviously, we all use email all the time, but I use Twitter quite a lot as well. So that's my Twitter handle. And instead of an O, it's a 0, just because the O was taken, obviously. But for, any stage, feel free to contact me. And thank you very much for coming along.
John, there's a question in the chat box.
Oh, yep. Oh,
It is
okay.
really cool, but how do you introduce it to the community?
Yeah, great. So I would say the first thing that's key is start small. And it's the same with any change initiative. What you don't want to do is try and go, okay, now everyone in the whole of the elementary school is going to start doing digital citizenship or digital learning portfolios, or suddenly we're all going to be using this specific app or this process. That really never works. When you start with change broadly with a large group, typically what happens is it either falls over or the year later you're starting with change around something else. And so with anything, and as we did with this, proof of concept first. Often people say, well, we're going to do a trial of something. Just avoid the language for trial ever. Trial implies failure. Trial implies you don't know what you're doing. Trial implies that you haven't done this before. When you say you're doing a proof of concept, it's really clear that you think this is valuable, you know what you're doing, and this is just to make sure it works well. So we started a proof of concept with the free version, just with a group of staff internally in our office. And I think before I sort of tell you, we started first with the internal office, then we got a bit bigger, then we got too big for the demo. So then we bought the real thing and we kept growing like that. I just think with any change initiative, it doesn't matter what it is, small proof of concept first, and then you engender trust. People trust you. They go, oh, that works. That's a cool idea. And then your boss hopefully trusts you and goes, okay, I'll back that with resources. Don't try and go, okay, everyone on staff, we're doing this. How might we challenge through idea management at our next meeting? That's when things don't work.
Another question. In the beginning, you mentioned the stages of identify, support, showcase, and scale. Can you please explain scale?
Yeah, so ultimately scale is really about at zero to zero, notice, zero cost. How do you get that idea to grow? So you've showcased, you've captured that great example of practice. You can share out by YouTube, Twitter, social media. How do you scale it? You ask that teacher to present at the next teach meet you do with your teachers. You ask that teacher to share what they're doing on Twitter. You take that example of what they're doing and you publish it widely for other people to see. You use it as a reference point constantly and bring people back to it, because people within your organization are more likely to take action from their peers than they are from you. So it's about growing it, getting more than one person to do it. Any other final ones?
Just as a reminder for all participants, we have extra time. If you want to network with people in the conference, there's a Live Curious Go Beyond Cafe. You'll find it in your schedule on the right, on the last section in the Excel. There's the link.
Cool, thank you everyone. If you've got a last minute question, feel free to stay on and I'll answer it. Otherwise, enjoy your conference. It started off so fantastically. I'm looking forward to checking out the recordings as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, I have a question for you. I'm sorry I got kicked out, and so I'm not sure if this has been asked.
Oh, no problem.
But I was wondering if you could elaborate on what you do during the 2-day design sprint. What is that?
Yeah. All right, I'll show you. How about that? Give me a second, let me just find it. So essentially what that was a design thinking exercise running for 2 days, where we started by introducing them to the platform, and then we ran a number of design, or we had a number of facilitation strategies to use over the course of the process. So we started broadly. Let me just see where it is. Here it is. I'll just quickly talk to it. I'm going to skip some of the stuff because it's got a lot of conference logistics, but you'll get the idea. I won't put it in presentation mode, then I can see. So we explained essentially what the challenge was. So they're looking for opportunities, how to get on the platform, those sort of things. And then we had essentially a process they were going to go through. So they would work away or move away as teams. They'd go through a cycle of doing some basic interviews. So interviewing a few key people about the problem so they could better understand it. they would take the feedback from the interview structure, and one of those interview techniques was dreams and gripes, if you haven't heard of it, where you go, well, if you're talking about a problem, what are your 2 dreams about this idea and what are your 2 gripes? So you get the positive and the negative, and then you start looking for similarities between different people's ideas. So they took that feedback. They then created a how might we question that they think addressed one of the concerns or one of the opportunities there. The whole community jumped in and provided feedback, and we had a couple of other strategies built in there. And then we took them to this, which is creating a star. And this is actually really super useful, even if you're interviewing and you're going for jobs. So essentially what it is it lets you break down a simple change initiative, or it lets you explain a time you did something comprehensively. So it stands for situation, task, action, result. So what was the situation? Well, our parents were complaining at our school. The kids are always doing the wrong thing on their devices at home, playing too many games and all this sort of stuff. What's the task? Well, we decided we wanted to come up with a responsible user agreement between students, parents, and the school about the effective ways to use technology. What's the action? Well, we sat down with parents and talked to them about their problems. We talked to the students about their concern. We talked to the teachers. We talked about some positive or proactive strategies that could support. We looked at other examples of a responsible use agreement. And then the results, as a result of this, we've seen a percentage decrease in the number of complaints. So a star is a way to explain anything you've ever led. If you're ever going for a leadership job, just use it. Just speak to that comprehensively, and people go, oh, okay, I understand the full scope of the initiative. So we did that for 2 days. Each of these key points had a few different strategies. They got to the star, and then they made an example of it. They built a prototype of it. Is that helpful? Okay.
Very much so. Thank you very much for that explanation.
No worries.